Salam sejahtera, ini adalah agenda Awani bersama saya, Ibrahim Sani. Pada bulan Jun tahun 2020, Perdana Menteri Malaysia, Tan Sri Muhyiddin Yassin telah pun mengumumkan bahawa Muhammad Taufik Tengku Aziz akan dilantik sebagai Presiden dan Ketua Pegawai Eksekutif Kumpulan Petronas yang baru menggantikan Tan Sri Wan Zulkifli Wan Arifin. Pelantikan beliau telah pun genap setahun dan hari ini beliau sudi untuk meluangkan masa bersama kami untuk membincangkan tentang perkembangan syarikat itu dan juga industri minyak dan gas negara. Apa khabar Tengku?
Khabar baik. Apa khabar Ibrahim? Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi. Tengku, memandangkan Tengku dah setahun, kita guna anniversary period ni. Mungkin Tengku boleh kisahkan kembali tentang apa yang telah berlaku pada tahun ini dan juga mengisahkan juga tentang story Tengku dalam menjawat, dalam menerajui syarikat ini.
Terima kasih Ibrahim. Terima kasih sudah jemput saya pada hari ini. Sebenarnya saya masih ingat dengan amat jelas, dengan nyata sekali peristiwa dilantik menjadi Presiden dan Ketua Pegawai Eksekutif Petronas. Petronas ni kepada rakyat Malaysia mungkin satu syarikat keramat antara GLC dipandang sebagai satu institution yang cannot fail. Maka masa keputusan dibuat oleh Yang Amat Berhormat Perdana Menteri hari itu, I best describe it as I took on the roller coaster ride as it was about to get very very interesting. Tapi saya juga memang sedar pada masa itu keadaan industri memang amat mencabar, dan sampai hari ini kesedaran bahawa ini adalah menggalas satu amanah yang amat besar kerana the ultimate beneficiary of Petronas is rakyat Malaysia. We are a national oil company. Jadi kesedaran tu sampai sekarang, walaupun hampir setahun dah berlalu, masih ada rasa gelisah, gusar masa melaksanakan kerja sebab sedar tanggungjawab ni amat besar sekali.
Tengku, a lot of industry captains have been arguing that right now we are in a war, nak lawan combat pandemik ni. Dan the call for GLCs to come in and lend their support and help is much greatly needed, dan juga kita nak tengok macam mana fungsi dan peranan GLC dalam membantu kerajaan Malaysia untuk menangani pandemik ini. Apakah pandangan Tengku tentang peranan Petronas untuk membantu bukan sahaja kerajaan tapi membantu orang ramai dalam menangani isu pandemik ini?
GLC mungkin memainkan peranan yang amat unik sekali. We are probably on the spectrum where we can see ourselves operating almost as private sector, but also being able to carry out strategic initiatives and the strategic agenda oleh pihak kerajaan. Memang harus diperakui dengan adanya agenda strategik ni, the best limbs for government to enact any economic initiatives, anything to help socio-economic recovery, particularly after this war yang you have just mentioned tadi, Ibrahim. Memang ini adalah satu peperangan, virus yang kecil tetapi impaknya amat nyata. The reality is we have to recover better, and what better way to use perhaps a guided approach for GLCs to be able to spur and act as catalysts for certain sectors of industry to come back from what has been a very, very damaging pandemic. Jadi memang saya akui peranan GLC ada, bukan sahaja untuk memberi semula pemulihan kepada ekonomi, juga untuk memberi line of sight kepada employment, juga to spur industries which are secondary or supporter or enabler for our core activities. Memang ada peranan tersebut.
And so because of the well-described notion that GLCs are in a unique position to help the government in navigating through these very nasty, heavy seas right now that we're going through, it has to be discussed how Petronas is doing when it comes to financial performance, because that would be your artillery, that would be your ammunition in terms of helping out the infrastructure that we have today. Petronas, of course, posted profit after tax more than doubled year on year to 9.3 billion for the first quarter of this year. And of course, it's buoyed by a strengthened commodity price that is happening globally. But at the same time, is this a signal to better things to come for the rest of the year?
Yes. I am very, very conscious of how I convey this because I am known in certain circles as Mr. Downside Risk. I don't want to appear as the pessimist, but of course, you know the results. We have registered the first quarter revenue of slightly north of 52 billion. As you mentioned tadi, PAT, profit after taxes, has doubled to 9.3. What was more important for us to track in Petronas, dalam pihak pengurusan, lembaga pengarah, is to actually see that our cash flow from operations has also recovered. This is what keeps the industry going. Our inability to service working capital ataupun kalau ada gangguan kepada pembayaran subcontractor, the industry comes to a halt. Of course, there are challenges around COVID-19, tapi with CFFO coming back to about 14.3 billion, we see that there is a decent sign of us being able to manage the liquidity challenges. Yeah, as you have mentioned, it is critical to see these industry indicators point to Petronas Health recovering, and this is where I become Mr. Downside Risk. Tapi the rest of the year is actually still a question mark. A lot that you see today with us seeing that at least in quarter one, we saw prices recovering to around the $61 per barrel, and we contrast that one quarter behind, it was only 44. So there's already a pickup in prices. I think we've seen a similar trajectory for harga gas asli, natural gas, liquefied natural gas. When we recorded this recovery, I also cautioned that the rest of 2021 is still going to be subject to a lot of uncertainty. Among the factors, supply is going to return. We don't know what US position is going to be with Iran sanctions, and a lot of non-OPEC players may come back on stream sebab harga dah semakin attractive. And with supply correcting, some of the more bullish estimates say, hey, you could return and you could see a short-term super cycle of $70 to $80. Tapi our in-house view is, at best, with supply correcting itself, we will probably hit 60 plus on average over the full year. So we have to plan accordingly. And but it bodes well because it is far better than the expectations set by ourselves and in discussions with MOF at our board. The original expectation harga minyak setung $40 a barrel, tapi saya rasa some recovery will happen. The duration, extent of which still remains uncertain.
Tengku, I think that Mr. Downside Risk comes from your role of being an ex-CFO. I've never met a CFO that is generally a happy person. It's always a risky person, so to speak. Tapi jadi soalan sekarang ni, ramai rakyat nak tanya, adakah Petronas mempunyai dana yang mencukupi untuk membantu kerajaan approaching bajet belanjawan yang akan datang ni? Sebab pada tahun lepas kita pun dah saksikan di mana kerajaan menginginkan Petronas untuk memberikan dividen yang lebih. Adakah situasi yang sama akan berulang untuk tahun ini, dan jika ia berulang, do you guys have enough to make it work, so to speak?
Yeah, that's why exactly, Ibrahim. I think the key indicator when we track is cash flow from operations. We are seeing and nursing and managing this to come back to a degree of health. When the pandemic started, antara inisiatif yang kami laksanakan ialah starting this work stream which we call Liquidity Plus. When we say Liquidity Plus, liquidity business as normal plus the need to also contend with contingencies. Kalau ada anak syarikat yang tersangkut, ada kekangan working capital, or they come up short for capex contribution. Naturally, the pandemic itself offered a whole host of challenges. Ada project yang deferred, ada project yang cost escalate, which is why the view on liquidity is something my CFO and I discuss very, very regularly. I have to say, even when I was CFO, this was a regular discussion item dengan my predecessor, Tan Sri Wan Zul. When it comes to the question of being able to assist, let me look at the track record of Petronas. You know that ever since its inception, every time we discuss about our return and contribution to shareholders, stakeholders, when it comes to returning to the federal, state governments, royalties and taxes, in total, the number that people don't remember is the 1.2 trillion ringgit since inception coming back. We have always been, as a GLC, something that acts to return and optimize its returns to shareholders. tak jauh berbeza as from your own background, any listed company will also have that obligation. But of course, the unique tension, as you have rightly pointed out, is also from time to time, the ability to respond to short-term shocks to Petronas system as well as the local economy. Insofar as our answer, and this is where our board has been able to act very autonomously with the shareholder, we always govern this answer around affordability. I think I've already gone on record a number of times, to expect ourselves to recover, we are going to need to spend 40 to 50 billion capex over the next 5 years. In contending with that, dengan adanya penjanaan cash flow from operations, if you're looking at, you cannot do a straight line. There are some parts of the year that you're going to have better, but if you look at one quarter's guidance at around 14 billion, the point here is when the call comes, we will have to assess upon affordability. But Petronas will deliberate it very thoroughly. It's not an imposition by government. The government always requests it. And the board will take account of our obligation, servicing the capex, making sure our financial debts are serviced on time. After all of that, and now layered on dengan ada cabaran working capital dalam masa pandemic ni, we also have to layer that challenge, which is why that little bit of contingency needs to be kept. If we can afford it, if the shareholder requires, based on affordability, we will respond. And you saw that last year. Because of the permintaan in COVID-19, I think we escalated it to about 34B payout. Tahun ni, the commitment is 18B dividend. I know that 1-2 quarter comes out. And by the way, thank you for calling me a miserable CFO, because that pretty much described how I was throughout my time. But anyway, that's where we are. That's where we are. I think this will be a qualitative as well as a quantitative estimation based on affordability at the point of asking. We will do this, and we will consider it carefully.
It's important for me to reiterate what you just said. It's not a demand, it's a request, and the board at Petronas will deliberate. My question to you is, what would be some of the conversations that is happening at the board? You're the ED, you're the executive director. Is it a robust debate, or it's more of the government wants it, let's try to see how we make it work? Which one is it?
It's a very robust debate. Actually, the paper is fully cognized that not only as our incorporation as PDA 1974, we have an obligation to monetize, but we are also a company under Companies Act 1974. You are obliged as an entity under Companies Act to demonstrate the solvency and liquidity test. So the government can ask, but the directors must also say the company is acting legally within the ambit of Companies Act 1974. It has to demonstrate the solvency and liquidity is kept whole. Pertama. Second, they will ask me, is there any emerging debt obligation, and whether there is a bunching of liability that needs to be serviced. As much as our treasury and corporate finance help shape the repayment profile of debt obligations, there are certain years and there are points in time, because we pay out not only debt, we also pay out royalties, we have to service state sales tax. So if there is a crunch on cash, this is something that the board thoroughly investigates. And obviously, we cannot escape any conversation at a board right now without addressing keperluan to reinvest, not only in the core operations, but also as we face energy transition. There will be a need to redeploy capital in new areas, including renewables, other step outs into possible new frontiers of business like specialty chemicals. We need to set it aside. So the discussion is very robust. And we always have a near-term 12-month overview, and of course a 5-year overview. So both those dimensions are thoroughly deliberated at the board.
You know, generally speaking, I don't fancy really long-term targets because I feel that companies might not have the visibility to see what's next for the next even 5 years. But Petronas is a very special case because the fate of the country is intertwined with the fate of Petronas, like it or not. So it's important for you're one of those companies that I really want a long-term plan, right? And when we talk about the industry landscape, you were touching about 40 billion capex that is needed over the next 5 years. it's important for us to touch on the industry as well. The energy transition is important. People have been talking about it for the longest of time. When we go to Davos and it keeps on cropping up. Did you know that only 20% is renewables? Yeah, we all know that. But the impetus to change never did come until now, until 2020 took over, until 2021 that we're still grappling over. G7 is now finally trying to combat minimum corporate tax global rate for the first time. That's because they too are losing cash from these massive Silicon Valley companies and the likes to other tax haven countries. The impetus to change, I feel, is now. Do you feel that now it's easier for you guys to talk about partners to collaborate with when it comes to energy transition, moving to collaborative partnerships elsewhere, try to see where we can go with renewables?
I think the industry as a whole, people hate this term when I use it. It sounds very cliche. They have been compelled to look at this situation as a great reset, because over time there have been convergence of certain trends. You have seen very aggressive policy shifts, countries declaring net zero ambitions. You have seen investors walk away or not participating in companies they see to be unable to demonstrate their sustainability credentials. You have seen consumer preferences asking the whole energy industry to decarbonize. And as overarching, the trend is also pushing towards efficiency of current energy ecosystems anyway. So you're looking at renewables compelled to become, on a levelized cost basis, a lot more competitive with traditional hydrocarbon-based fuels. So all of this, when they converge, wrap around a pandemic which really laid bare apa yang sebenarnya supply chain yang was going to be fragile throughout this last 15-16 months. It has just come and it has hit the industry like a freight train. It has compelled everybody to relook apa within my portfolio that can actually survive the onset of a prolonged low oil price if renewable energy becomes a viable competitor and a viable substitute. Secondly, they are also seeing that their access to capital markets is increasingly curtailed because the ability to tap markets is now subjected to your ability to demonstrate I am doing something about energy transition. Bukan sahaja isu sustainability report. In my capacity as CFO, the kind of rigor that we had to face, particularly from European and American investors, asked us not to only narrate what is your direction, they asked us to tell what is your commitment. And increasingly, we see that trend transcending European and American investors is now moving to Asia. I know a number of banks here have also made pronouncements about avoiding coal. So we cannot deny it. The pandemic, and in the context of you asking me to take a look, has just hastened everything. So while we may have a good near-term cycle here where we are recovering to around $60 to $70 and we are basking in a short-term sunshine, we must prepare ourselves for the longer-term rainy day. So I know, as you pointed out, that redeployment of 40B to 50B in certain years, we will have to carefully craft out an allocation supaya the right foundations are built for us. Hence our investment in M+, for our solar renewables. Hence our positioning to provide transport sector with LNG bunkering fuel. Hence our positioning to explore offshore. You mentioned working with partners. We are already talking to customers in our core markets in Japan. Hydrogen is a possibility. We are working with Sarawak Energy to electrify. Every limb that we can extend to prepare ourselves for the onset of this new energy transition, we are extending and we are stretching out.
Baik. Tengku, kita akan berehat sebentar. Kita akan kembali selepas ini. Baik, terima kasih anda sedang menonton Agenda Awani. Bersama kita pada hari ini adalah Tengku Muhammad Taufik, Tengku Aziz. Tengku, the redeployment of resources is not just about money, it's also about human capital development. And of course, while Petronas is blessed with a lot of individuals that are particularly good in what they do currently, specialists even in the oil and gas sector, what is the status of Petronas in redeploying the human capital inside Petronas for sustainability, for renewables energy, for embracing change. As you say, the Great Reset, I'm sure it must include the redeployment of the intellectual capacity of Petronas as well. Where do we stand on this?
Okay, wow, this is a big, all-encompassing question, Rahim. You really raised the humdinger here. So, Petronas has always been committed to human capital development, from our education sponsorship program, from our training of technical and non-technical executives and non-executives alike, setting up of institutions. This entire framework, I just to give you a little. I was looking at my iPad here. The number is slightly under 38,000 people who we have sponsored. Just to show you that we build a human capital program that trickles all the way to the top. I have an executive leadership team. 6 out of 9 are the products of our own human capital development program, including sponsorships. We have, I think, now stated our aim to get about 80% of our people equipped with some degree of digital capacity. When we navigate this new energy transition, and you are forced to look at your core business, now maybe I divide the answer into two, core and growth business. The core business centered around hydrocarbons has to be run cheaper and cleaner. Cheaper is prompted through efficiencies, but cleaner will compel innovations. And that is where we need to bring talent to the fore. We need the new talent to rethink how we deliver our energy and solutions to our customers in the cleanest way possible. And that conforms well to our entire sustainability agenda. From the growth engine, you do need a whole new set of thinking. If I may be quite honest, secara jujurnya dan I think quite secara ikhlasnya, the challenge that I put forth to my teammates, my family here in Petronas, is that you have been in a business for the last 47 years where you are pretty much a supply push entity. If you produce it, someone will buy it. But now, as energy transition is upon us, customers are going to become a lot more selective. Host authorities are going to be a lot more fussy in according you the license to operate. No longer just safety, but also sustainable operations which engender enrichment of lives in the local community. So this new set of talent has to have a lot more customer centricity. This new talent must have the ability to back up and look at speaking up and acting with courage. And I'm citing from our cultural beliefs here, because the old ways of getting us here will not get us there going forward. We have to rethink how we deliver and answer clients' needs. Even at home, my gas and new energy team are stretching out all the way to addressing virtual pipeline systems, addressing rooftop solar needs, because we have positioned ourselves, mungkin tak ramai yang tak sedar, our statement of purpose states that we are now a progressive energy and solutions partner, enriching lives for a sustainable future. That has evolved coming from a company which is inherently traditionally oil and gas based. So we are positioning ourselves to become an energy and solutions partner, and in order to shift, the talent base as well as the culture governing this talent must change.
It's also important for us to examine the leadership qualities that is coming out of Petronas. Of course, when we talk about Petronas, it's the big family, but there's a lot of listed subsidiaries as well, from MISC to Petronas Chemicals, Petronas Dagangan, Petronas Gas, and so on. And each and every single one of them have management, they have a board, and of course I can imagine some of them are intertwined with one another, but generally speaking, each of them have a big role to play, a huge role in fact, in their own domain. How do you ensure that while the current crop of leaders continue to bring about good and better corporate governance?
Let's deal with some demographics that I have to contend with. I am blessed. Some people say it's probably a burden, but I think I'm blessed. We have human capital, and the asset we call the people in Petronas is probably its greatest gift. We are dealing with inherently, our business is hydrocarbons, you extract it, it's going to deplete. But the human capital behind it, it is truly the most valuable asset. The facet of human capital in Petronas ni, kalau nak dikatakan, almost half of the employee base is below 35 years old. So anyone who takes on a leadership role in Petronas has not only amanah to fulfill for the country, but also has an obligation and responsibility that you provide a clear runway and a career pathway for your immediate report. Not only that, the teams under them and the successors beyond them. The ongoing ambition within the executive leadership team is not to see our 50th anniversary, not to see our 60th, but to see that Petronas reaches 100 years old. If we are, I think we have seen this classic chart. If we map your Fortune 500 tahun 1990 versus where we are today, the shift has been quite amazing. Now, as we do this, naturally there will be some parts of the business which will not be governed in the way that we originally carved them out to be. They need to conform to the best standards of corporate governance. Hence, in monetizing a number, we have seen that listed companies have behaved cohesively and in coherent abidance with MCCG. We respect the Malaysian corporate governance. In fact, it's something that we pursue. The highest levels of governance is what actually distinguishes Petronas from other, shall we say, less established NOCs. A lot of our partners and counterparties and customers respect the fact that we will adhere to our contracts. We are reliable. We have not failed to fulfill. A very good marker of this is our track record in delivering LNG. We've got almost 11,700 cargoes from the point of inception without interruption, even through a pandemic. We run the processes in a transparent, visible, commercially inclined way, and our partners respect that. And inshallah, as both the regulator and also a key catalyst for oil and gas activities at home, we have managed to discharge this dual role while abiding to corporate governance. But now, as we evolve into an energy player, we need to now ensure that even more pronounced, because as we mentioned earlier, the ESG demands are increasing. We have to demonstrate this even as we embark on new businesses, and the talent and the management and the leadership will have to contend with that.
So a lot of companies I speak to, when we talk about ESG, it's more of the S and the G, the social and the governance aspect. But for your company, clearly, environment is a big player as well. And we all contend to the fact that while things are changing for Petronas, whether or not you guys are attracting the right talent, whether or not you guys are improving on the governance aspect, you're right, the regulator element as well. So now the question is, when we talk about things to change, it's the humans that will change it. It's about trying to attract younger folks over keremajaan syarikat lah, so to speak. But it's enlightening to hear that 35 years old is the average age. Having said that, Petronas has had a long track record of helping out students, particularly now that we speak of a post-SPM stage and all that. Do you feel that the role for Petronas to help out students and the youth in entering not just the job market, but getting them educated in the process is now greater, amplified, now is more important than before, in fact, when it comes to helping out the youth?
Absolutely, absolutely. Particularly as the shape of our economy is going to be probably altered forever post-pandemic. If you look at the way that we work and the way that we deliver, how even the most basic manufacturing, and in our instance, in our example, how the most basic operations in offshore, that's going to be revisited. Case in point, you're looking at a person who has come through the Petronas sponsorship program. I think I was a beneficiary all the way through to even being able to continue through my professional articleship in ICAEW. There have been many probably extensions of this program, not only for the financial or accounting backed professionals, but I think here we've got engineers being put through a techno-commercial leadership program. We've got people with upskilling of digital skills. We've got a digital academy, which I'm about to launch in coming hours. And this is all part of the building block to prepare us and make sure that the energy workforce within Petronas is increasingly future-proof. There's no foolproof 100% to get them ready, but this obligation as an enterprise is there. This duty to country, as I mentioned just now, almost 38,000 people being sent on scholarships, it continues. Interesting note that you probably, not many will realize, throughout the pandemic, many companies recoiled with cost cutting, but this is one area we did not even consider visiting. We continued with the obligation to send people abroad. We continue churning out undergrads from UTP. We are trying to get them as much as possible skilled and ready for the challenges of the future energy landscape. And insofar as that youth, we see that as an opportunity to both reskill and upskill. I've gone on record to say I want to retool the human capital equation. Now this is, orang kata, what the heck does that mean, retool human capital? In simple terms, you have a workforce which is now 48,000. Through natural attrition, retirement, people leaving, you will lose a number. And you have an intake. But with the base that you gain, you need to have the right mix of skills to contend to both those challenges I mentioned earlier, the core or running of a hydrocarbons-based business and the growth areas which may not be entirely traditional. So memang it's front and center on the executive leadership team's table that we have to deal with upskilling, reskilling, and enabling these guys to succeed, to ensure Petronas reaches its 100th anniversary.
Okay, since I have you on, the Digital Academy, Petronas Digital Academy is actually a much observed initiative. It's a collaboration between you and Microsoft, and it's not just about the two big companies of the world, actually. It's Fortune 500 companies talking together. It's about that retooling, reskilling that you speak of. What is the desired outcome from this creation? What kind of impact do you think it will bring about when people get engaged with the Petronas Digital Academy?
And look at us here, Ibrahim. A year ago, I would have driven to your studio. I would have invited you to the office to conduct this. When March 2020 rolled about, we didn't have a choice. We sat in our offices for a very short while and probably considered the permutations. What do we do? How do we conduct our activities going forward? It is going to show up very clearly in coming years that this is not going to be a temporary arrangement. I think many Fortune 500s, maybe many of the world's largest companies, accept that mobile, working from home, potentially arranging people in employment terms, which are, I think the term bandied about is the gig economy, not on permanent employment, shifting in and out. We have to consider all of these permutations as we go forward. At the most basic level, I've set a challenge, and I think we cited this when we had the event with Microsoft recently under the auspices of Yang Amat Berhormat Perdana Menteri. I told them that 80% of our guys need to be upskilled. And we've set a KPI, my chief digital officer together with myself need to get the numbers through the digital academy and train with the basics of analytics at the very least. We need to also build a cadre of data scientists because we need to bring, energy transition has forced us to look at how we shorten the development time frame. You jumpa a field, but getting it to first gas needs to be shortened. It cannot take the long gestation period. Analytics will help us to do that. We collaborate with the world's foremost universities, Imperial College and Heriot Ward, to name two, to bring the skill sets and the analytics to a point where we can churn and make fields monetized in more systematic economic fashion, but in the shortest time frame. Because masa tak banyak. Energy transition will probably find us at some point seeing oil demand dip off. And in order to deal with this phenomenon, we also realize you have to reduce your carbon footprint today. Given our remote workforce arrangement applies in the office, we're also seeing how digital twins, augmented reality, remotely operated offshore platforms are going to be woven into our daily fabric of operations. It is now designed to be a safety measure, but as we go forward, we learn from this crisis, and it's an opportunity to amp up our efficiency metrics as well as reduce our carbon footprint. So all of this is coming together, and digital is key to unlocking all of this, which is why it is a core building block. Much has been said about how Microsoft is going to be contributing to digitization of Malaysia. But coming back to your earlier theme, I think the GLCs have an obligation as well to make sure we have a workforce which is digital ready.
You know, you were talking about the composition of the Fortune 500 list of the yesteryears versus today. Today, Exxon is the only hydrocarbon company that is listed in the Fortune 500. Of course, the composition is still there. There's a lot of energy companies being listed there still. But what is important for us to note is that the transition into tech, healthcare, retail, consumer, everything is now dominating that kind of list. And I can only see this trend going forward. Do you feel that Petronas is uniquely poised and positioned to ensure survivability? You were talking about Petronas reaching its 100th year anniversary. We all wish that. And it's not just reaching it by merely reaching it, it's also reaching it at its most prosperous manner, the way we see you guys today. Is Petronas embracing that change, and do you feel that the culture at Petronas is ready to embrace that change?
Not only do we have to embrace that change, we have to hold it close and know the trends that are going to shape the energy landscape going forward. It has started with a very strong and pronounced renewables energy pursuit. I think we're building up the capacity. We're aiming for 3 gigawatts by 2024. But we also realize, and I threw this challenge down, and I think it was picked up by the press, that we want to get to net zero by 2050. In order to do this, there needs to be lines of businesses that offer carbon offsets. Now, this can be achieved through renewable energy, or it can be done directly and applied by purchasing businesses which present, either by solar, offshore wind, a means of reducing the total carbon emissions. Over and above that, the traditional, or I say traditional, the inherent way of approaching carbon footprint reduction is also going to engender us taking steps like preventing more flaring. We are going to electrify and not rely on gas turbines to power our facilities, and we are doing that already. There have been tie-ups with Sarawak Energy on that front very recently with our LNG facility. When we do this, the net total target is to bring us at this juncture to around 49.5 million tons of CO2 equivalent emissions, and we're doing this by the building blocks I cited earlier. But over and above that, the business is not going to remain static. You're going to grow. Even the current operation is going to create more carbon. We're going to have to find new businesses to offset it. So, as a matter of necessity, to contain our total carbon emissions and carbon footprint, we're going to have to find ways. The second question that you asked around, can we survive beyond the current base set of business lines? That is the challenge also thrown upon us, well, upon me. On my very first day, actually, our PM had the foresight and asked me on day one of me reporting to him, excuse me, young man, you realize that you are joining the roller coaster at its most interesting point. Do you realize that you also need to think about diversification, because Petronas is such a key economic catalyst for the country? And of course, I acknowledged his request in representing the shareholder. He has already recognized we need to place our foundations and our bets in this time frame, no longer wait. But if we don't do so, we're going to find ourselves with a revenue and a top line that's going to drop off if we rely on a depleting resource. So things which are going to be less commodity in nature, specialty chemicals, things are going to help us with carbon offsets, the renewables business, even the non-fuel business, as our results have cited, is looking at means of providing solutions. That's why we are an energy and solutions partner, solutions to the end customer. The culture that needs to come along with it is that customer centricity. If you don't understand what preferences are going to emerge, you can't respond to the need. And that is the bit that probably is going to take the biggest push by the leadership team as we navigate energy transition.
You know, it's right that you pointed out that you're a young man. You are a young man when it comes to leading a Fortune 500 company, but you are stepping into the shoes of giants, anywhere from Tan Sri Hassan to Tan Sri Wan Zul. Each of them have a very unique legacy that they left behind. I know it's premature to ask you now. You've just enjoyed your first anniversary, but what would be some of the things that you think about when leaving back a legacy once you are, I guess, done with this mission at Petronas?
Yeah. The oft espoused legacies of someone like Tan Sri Hassan is the foray into internationalization. Someone like Tan Sri Wan Zul probably helped us ride out a crisis and improved efficiencies with his OER initiatives, and he's well known within the industry for that. For mine, I think the one unspoken and often unsung attribute that all the leaders before me have put forth, and I must re-emphasize, is the culture of integrity. That's one. That needs to be not the culture, it's a shared value. It's a value that needs to survive, and it needs to be timeless, and it needs to survive beyond me and whoever comes after me. Integrity and everything that supports it, the necessary corporate governance, the transparency. Petronas has been known for that, and long may it be the case. But on a personal level, I think the one big legacy that I'd want to leave is an entire human capital base that is able to contend with energy transition. Because, as I've mentioned earlier, the assets may deplete, the plants and refineries may wither and be decommissioned, but it is the people that is going to create these new revenue lines. It is the people who is going to extract the last bit of juice out of our core assets. It is them who's going to lay down the foundations for these new revenue lines, which will generate the profit to sustain Petronas and indeed continue contributing to Malaysia. So my legacy hopefully is going to be an empowered, enabled workforce to deal with the challenges of sustainability and energy transition.
Tengku, soalan-soalan terakhir saya adalah berkisar tentang modal insan yang Tengku bangkitkan, terutamanya dalam peranan Petronas sebagai sebuah syarikat Fortune 500, antara 500 syarikat terbesar di dunia, maaf saya. Jadi kita nak lihat tentang peranan Petronas untuk balance out that role of profit making, but at the same time community building, pembangunan komuniti di Malaysia dan mungkin juga di beberapa pasaran yang Petronas sedang beroperasi. Apakah antara tanggungjawab yang Petronas menggalas sekarang tentang tujuan ataupun misi untuk membantu komuniti di mana Petronas sedang beroperasi sekarang?
Ya. Terima kasih Ibrahim. I think soalan ni memang selalu ditujukan kepada syarikat yang besar, kerana tanggungjawab sebagai syarikat sekarang ni kita harus akui bahawa tanggungjawab ni melebihi hanya untuk menghasilkan keuntungan. The phrase profit with purpose sekarang mungkin selalu diguna pakai. Jadi kalau kita nak buktikan apa yang Petronas telah berikan, saya rasa senarai ini mungkin terlalu panjang. Bukan saja pada tahap syarikat tadi, tapi mungkin saya berasa beruntung kerana tenaga kerjanya amat prihatin tentang keperluan masyarakat at large. We have continued. Tidak ada potongan pada contribution to Yayasan Petronas, di mana the focus is social well-being dengan education. 100 million ringgit allocation continues even through this difficult time. Masa pandemik COVID-19 ni melanda Malaysia dan dunia, saya rasa secara langsung contribution kepada NADMA daripada tenaga kerja, pemberian intensive care equipment, saya rasa lebih 100 buah diberi sebagai satu donation, ventilators, dan even as we recover dan ada keperluan untuk menyediakan pihak pendidik dan juga student dengan kebolehan digital, we also responded to the Cerdik initiative by the government and gave laptops to students. Insofar as Petronas, kesedaran Petronas terhadap tanggungjawabnya kepada masyarakat, saya rasa sukar nak dipertikaikan. Tapi mungkin ramai yang tak sedar contribution ini is continuously happening. Even as we speak today, today is a day that I'm on an interview with you. We are probably a couple of days in operating a PPV in Pengerang to help industry, working together with MITI. We are contributing our site to run as a PPV to have an outreach to industry. Saya rasa in so far as the contribution of Petronas kepada masyarakat, this is part of the DNA of Petronas. We have long been seen as a benevolent and community contributive partner. Mungkin inilah yang dianggap lain daripada yang lain. Masa negara-negara menjemput Petronas untuk masuk terlibat dalam industri gas dan minyak tempatan mereka, satu aspek yang dipertimbangkan ialah the ability to return to community. We continue to localize, we continue to offer scholarships, we help social well-being, we have number of channels to contribute to the upliftment of society. Yayasan, as I mentioned, is an example. Every day, sama ada daripada the limbs, even as they are listed, also contribute. I think I mentioned just now Petronas Dagangan, the initiative to get farm food fresh through their stations to the consumers adalah juga cara untuk unleash the B40, the SMEs to get to the customers they need to access. So memang kesedaran ni memang dah lama terbenam dan terpendam, and I don't think we have to worry because it's part of Petronas DNA to contribute and return to society.
Baik. Tengku Taufik, izinkan saya untuk mengucapkan tahniah ke atas ulang tahun pertama menerajui Petronas. I don't envy the job you're holding. Clearly, while other CEOs normally talk about challenges when helming a particular company, yours is the undisputed champion in terms of challenges. It's not just about Petronas, it's not just about Malaysia, it's about the world. And the pandemic is impacting everyone to a lot of degrees, varying degrees. But tahniah, dan juga saya doakan usaha Tengku dan juga warga Petronas untuk terus menjayakan syarikat itu kerana the impact is directly correlated to the country. Sekian saja perbincangan kita dengan Tengku Muhammad Taufik Tengku Aziz. Beliau merupakan Presiden dan juga Ketua Pegawai Eksekutif Kumpulan Petronas. Sekian saja untuk episod kali ini. Saya Ibrahim Sani.